Hello everybody, it's Shireen and JD from Moji Masala. Hope you're doing great. It's a cold November day and it's the perfect day to be making Rogan Josh. It's a wonderful fall dish and we're so excited that you're joining us. So this is what we're making. I don't know if the timing's good for a lot of you, but I know a lot of you, this is one of your favorites, and if you have time to make it with us, great. We have brand new packaging. So since this is our first video, really, since it's our first cooking show, since redoing our packaging, I kind of want to show it off a little bit. A lot of bright colors, a lot of details about really what the spices are, what the flavor profile is, how to cook the dish, all on the back of the packet. Quick cooking video, instructional, like literally 30 seconds to a minute, that just, you almost don't even need to use the recipe, which is already so easy. So take some time, read it, and I really hope it helps you make all your cooking just more fun and a lot more easy. So pick this dish to be our sort of first fall dish, because when the weather cools like this, it really becomes like this deep craving. You want the smokiness of the black cardamom, you want the richness of a curry, the comfort of a curry, the really grounding feeling of eating rice. Not too different than eating, I guess, like an Italian bolognese perhaps on a cold day. And my daughter loves this dish, and literally I need to give it to her about once a week, any time of the year. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna do chicken today. You can do this with chicken or with lamb. And if you use lamb, we highly suggest using the lamb leg. So today, and with chicken, the thighs. You can use chicken breast if you'd like, but it tends to dry out, which is not great. So if you're gonna use chicken breast, try to mix it with thighs or legs. I'm doing thighs, and I did bone in, skin on, which is how you buy them, and then I just pulled the skin off. I really love doing the bone in. The flavor really is just like super, it's just more flavorful, you know, when you have it with the bone. And then if you want to serve it without the bone, it's pretty easy. The meat will fall right off the bone. So we're gonna start today just by very simply following the instructions, which is to marinate the chicken in yogurt and oil. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that here. I don't know, JD, if you can see me when I do this. So we have 2 tablespoons of olive oil here, which I'm just going to estimate. It's not, and with this, you know, with the marinade, not so important to be perfectly measured. So I kind of have a good sense of that. Going to go and do the half a cup of full fat yogurt. So please use full fat. Otherwise the texture of the curry just will not be there, and nor will the flavor. I really do like the Greek full fat yogurt, which I know a lot of people sort of enjoy these days. If yours is a thicker version of that, please add a little bit of water, because you really want it to be not liquidy, but very easy to kind of blend, very easy to add the spices, and you don't want your spices to get too clumpy when you fold those in. Just mixing that up in there. Now you take the full packet. Had some people say, oh, when I opened the packet, I just thought, oh my gosh, that's a lot of spice. It's going to be so spicy. Well, yes, there is chili in here. It's Kashmiri chili, which is much milder, but it's not spicy. It's flavorful. There are so many different spices in here that make the layered flavors of Rogan Josh amazing. So do not hesitate to just whole thing. And if, you know, sometimes maybe you're craving the dish but don't necessarily want to make the whole thing, it freezes beautifully. The raw marinated chicken also freezes really well. So then, you know, you can freeze half and cook half if you like. You can cook really what I tend to do is cook the whole dish. And if I have leftover, I either make like a biryani, that's literally another way to make a biryani, and just use that as your meat and flavor profile for the rice. And actually I'm gonna do a blog post this Sunday that kind of explains how to do that. Or you can just freeze the cooked portion and have it another time, which is great. So simple. All I'm doing here, you can see that. Going to now use the gloves just for the chicken, just to be a little bit extra safe. I like to do that. So here, bone in, skin off, just pull the skin right off. It really just takes a minute or two to get all 8 skins off. All right, hopefully you can see that. I'm just throwing it right in there. Okay. Now, this part's very important because you really want to get the marinade everywhere. I know some people have a habit with marinades of perhaps putting it in a plastic bag and shaking it. That works fine if it's a very liquidy lemonade. This is a much thicker marinade. So you really want to use your hands. You want to get everywhere, on the top, underneath, and all the little nooks and crannies, because that's where just like all that flavor is going to sit when you cook it. So just mix that in. This is why I also use a glove hand. It makes it, you know, if you're a little, don't want to touch the raw meat, or maybe if you have a cut or something, it could actually sting a little bit. So it just allows you to just really get in there and do this right. So much of Indian cooking is around little techniques like this, like really marinating thoroughly. And I'm going to show you when we cook the base of just really cooking the onions properly, letting the spices cook before you go to the next stage. So, you know, we're taking care of a lot of the hard part with our spice blends by really letting it just, you know, these are organic spices. They are the recipes that my mom used, that my grandmother gave her. So much of that flavor profile is already there for you, and it's fresh ground and it's delicious. So if you just sort of rely on that for the flavor and really kind of get some of these techniques down, you know, you're going to be amazed by how wonderful everything is going to taste, and how authentic, honestly, how authentic everything is going to taste. Okay, so I think that's pretty good there. You can see there's marinade on everything. Okay. So normally what you do now is you hopefully marinate it 12 to 24 hours, because it does give a lot of delicious flavor. But because I wanted to show you, you know, a little bit of the process of actually putting the marinade on, we're obviously not going to do that. We're going to cook it now. But I am going to give you a little trick, which is, a lot of times when I want to make something I don't have time to marinate, or in general if I want to add just a little bit more flavor, I always have a jar of garlic paste or garlic ginger paste, whichever one I can kind of find. And I'm going to add this into my onion base when I saute the onion. And adding the garlic, the ginger, even a little tomato paste into that onion base, it just adds a depth of flavor and a freshness that kind of compensates perhaps a little bit from not being able to marinate overnight. So turn this on, and this pot. And while that's heating up, I chopped up 3 cups of onions, which you can't see right now. And it's, again, it seems like a lot, but onion is one of the key ways in which your braises or your curries really kind of get thicker, not soupy and watery. And a lot of that onion just melts in. You're not going to bite into chunks of onion, even though it is a lot. So if you chop it, you know, pretty fine, just not too coarse, and cook it down the way kind of I'm going to show you, it's going to give a really lovely texture and flavor to the base. So don't skimp on the onion. You know, if you have a little less than 2 cups, that's fine. But you know, if you cut it in half, let's say, it really won't give you the same texture. It'll be it perhaps might be a little bit soupier. So I'm going to put in a high heat neutral oil. Now this is the key. Don't use olive oil when you're doing your braises. Indian food's really cooked. You know, you spend most of your time cooking on high heat. You're adding water along the way so that your pan doesn't burn. Little splashes of water to just keep the pan moist, to keep your food from burning, because you got to keep that heat high. That's just, the spices cook better that way. The meat browns the right way. The onions get to the right color and flavor profile. So you have to sort of stay committed to the high heat, not for a very long time, but for most of the braising time. So we use organic sunflower oil. It's just very neutral. It does well on high heat, but you know, grapeseed oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, all of those are fine. Just not olive oil. Okay. This is about 3 tablespoons. So with the Well, really the key is, you know, obviously we measured out, but the key is you want to cover your base. You don't want really any dry spots. It doesn't have to be like drowning in oil, but you definitely, you want to make sure that it's fully covered. Alright, I'm going to scoot out of the picture for a minute. Alright, I think it might need, this is a good test. Probably this induction heats up pretty fast, but yeah, it's already sizzling. It's a good test. Don't put it on when it's too cool. Just, again, just slows the process down here. 3 cups of onions. There we go. I use wide base metal pots for most of my Indian cooking. I think that the heat level gets to the right place more quickly, and for the continuous high heat cooking, I think it works great. And also, I don't know, they're much easier to cook than a lot of the ceramic or the Le Creuset type, even though the food does taste good, but I just find the cleanup easier in these stainless steel. Okay. So now this is 3 cups here, so this takes a good few minutes. Probably going to take about 8 to 10 minutes to do this. And I think while it's doing that, what you want to do, which I didn't do, is just keep some water at your side. So I'm just going to fill this up in a second. Just keep some water at your side because I'm going to show you, and hopefully you can see the pan pretty clearly. Eventually, I'm going to need to use splashes of it, like I said, to make sure my pan doesn't burn. Probably good to keep 1.5 cups of water, kind of very handy, throughout most dishes that you're cooking on the stove top, most braised dishes or sautés, which is really most Indian cooking is cooked this way. I'm going to saute that, but I also want to show you what I have been doing here, which is great. I cleaned my phone so I could use it in the kitchen, but we really we redid our website too. So right now, and I use this, like I no longer do the 87 steps spice to make any of my new cooking. I just, with having a daughter and being so busy and like loving the flavor of all of this, I literally keep all the packets for myself. I use this, and so you'll see that we have our recipe here. There's a little bit of information. If it's your first time cooking, you can check out our video, which is, again, like I said, the Rogan Josh is probably one of the longest ones, and that's a minute. And it's really step-by-step how to use it. A really nice description of what you're eating and what's in it, and our simple ingredients and instructions, which is awesome. So like I said, I think it's a testament because I'm finding myself cooking more and using it. It's just very user-friendly now. So now the onions are at the translucent phase, which I know with a lot of Western cooking, that's kind of the time in which you would start to kind of maybe finish up your onions. This is just the beginning for Indian cooking. And trust me when I tell you, if all you do is use our spices and cook your onions kind of till they really get a nice golden brown, that's just that's like 80% of the flavor, honestly. Even if you don't fully brown your meat as much as you should, and it just ends up kind of more simmering, the flavor is really with the spices and the cooked onion. And like I said, I'm going to add some like ginger paste or garlic paste to really get that flavor even a notch higher. And these are, you know, the Indian pantry items, I guess you would say, is like things you want on hand that really don't go bad, you know, for a very long time, is good quality tomato paste, you know, good quality garlic ginger paste, and our spice packets. I think with all of those, let's say you didn't have tomatoes or you didn't have time to marinate, those are really great items to have on hand that will dramatically improve your flavor. They're not expensive, and they're really easy to use. even when you open up the jar of garlic paste, you'll, that'll could comfortably be in the fridge for a couple months. I buy the tubes of tomato paste now, the double concentrate, which are delicious. Those can stay in the fridge now 20 days. Like, that was always the thing with tomato paste. You open up a can and then you have to like use it or freeze it. And so I find I easily use a tube of the tomato paste like within 20 days. In fact, some dishes are just all out. I didn't have tomatoes and I only used the double concentrate tomato paste. It's really delicious. I highly suggest that. Okay, so these onions are getting there. This induction I'll go a little higher than the induction and maybe speed it up. I haven't needed to, because I used a fair amount of oil, I haven't needed to really add water yet, but I think as it browns I will. But I think this is a good time. You can see, I don't know if you can see, I hope you can see. So we're getting to translucent onions. Some of them are starting to brown. A lot of the oil is absorbed. Just gonna add, doesn't really matter when you add this too much, but I'm gonna add some garlic paste, just right there in the middle. It can get a little, sometimes if there's too much oil in there, it can get a little poppy, so you just want to be careful with that. There we go. Oh, it smells really good. That's the other thing. You add these fresh elements. And it's good. So, excuse a little background noise. Okay, something's going around, so. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. And now you can see it's also, the onions are really strong. They're taking up like a third less space. It's delicious. It smells so good. Just the onions cooking smells so good. Okay. And actually, even if with the marinade, let's say you really didn't have time to marinate, if you just start, marinate your chicken even an hour before you cook, which is not, by the time, like if it's the first thing you do, you just get the ingredients, you get the olive oil, you get the yogurt, get the spices, throw the meat in there, marinate it. You're going to cook it within an hour, you don't have to put it in the fridge, and let it sit for the hour. That will actually add quite a bit of flavor, so even 1 hour would make a pretty big difference with that. Okay, so now my pan is starting to brown a little bit, so I'm going to do just a little splash of water, and you'll get just a little steamy there. But then you sort of scrape the bottom a little bit. Not a lot of water. You don't want the onions to be simmering in the water. You're really trying to really brown them over high heat. Keep the pan dry, fairly dry, but not burning. So that's just how you do it. A little splash. Oftentimes it's on the rim. Wherever you need it, scrape it off, move that water around a little bit, and then you'll see the water will be gone within seconds, really. And you just kind of keep that process going. So I think if you use a good amount of oil, you tend not to have to do as much water. So I tend to move my onions around a lot, but even just if you're a little bit slower with it, moving around. You just don't want them sitting there sticking, burning. You want the browning process to be kind of fairly even. Not perfectly even. Not a big deal to be perfectly even, but you don't want like half raw, half browned onions. And what you will find, obviously, because the pot or the pan that you're making, the heat is not evenly distributed. So often some will be very, very golden brown and some will be light brown, and that's fine too. That was a good indication that if your darkest onions are really, really brown, but the rest of it's pretty reasonably brown too, that's a good time to kind of go to the next step. So I'm getting some more brown spots. I'm going to add a little water, scrape, and so now this process of what I'm doing, I'm really starting with a base with an onion, eventually going to be adding spices. In this case it's marinated, it's a little different, but you're really forming the base, a masala base. And this is like where all the flavor of Indian cooking is. It's high heat cooking of onions, tomatoes, spices, with a little water and oil. And that's the beautiful, yummy stuff that your food's gonna cook in eventually. So getting this base is sometimes this is can be, it's not that long a process, but it's oftentimes the longest process as far as active cooking. And it's so critical. It's so critical to becoming, you know, a good Indian home chef, basically. And what I love about it is once you get this down, you can really start to experiment with, once you learn kind of how to cook the spices and what the flavor profile is, you know, you can really start to experiment with cooking other things, trying it with different produce items or vegetables, maybe adding some other spices you might have. Like a variation of this, which I'm not going to do today, because I didn't have the poppy seed, but if you have some fresh coconut, or shredded coconut, and some poppy seeds, which often people have because baking, poppy seeds is really popular in baking, and you have a mortar or pestle or grinder, and you just sort of mash it into a little bit of paste. And just the way I put garlic paste in here, you can put that coconut poppy seed paste in, and it will add a whole other layer of earthiness, a little sweetness. Oh, unsweetened coconut though. We don't want the sugar. It's delicious. I don't add it into our actual blends because those are, you know, heavy oil content. They won't stay fresh, basically. It's really something that, you know, you should make fresh if you're going to do that. But it's again, if you're if you're a regular Rogan Josh, if you're cooking Rogan Josh regularly and you just want to mix up the flavor profile a little bit, I highly suggest it. It's delicious. Or just the coconut if that's what we have, or just the poppy seed if that's what you have. About a teaspoon, I would say for this dish, I would do like a teaspoon of poppy seed and 3 to 4 tablespoons of shredded coconut, unsweetened. Okay, so I think we are making some progress here. I'm gonna show you a little bit. You can see they're fairly even, actually, which is, I think it's the induction. Pretty good at cooking evenly. Okay. So that's good. And we've got, I'm going to go another minute. It's so even and nice, but I want it to be darker brown because I know it's just going to add a little bit more of that deeper flavor to have the onion a little more cooked. Another minute. And this is really, you know, it is a braised dish. I'll tell you all I have this other minute. And you really, because it has a good amount of curry, and that's the idea. This is a dish you kind of need to really eat with rice or with naan, but it really, the rice holds that curry texture so well. It's so satisfying. You can do an Indian basmati rice. I find it's hard sometimes to find good quality Indian basmati rice, but I love Thai jasmine rice. It's stickier. It works really well with braises, with curries. And I find that's much easier to find, kind of like, you know, in a lot of places, a good quality Thai jasmine rice. Okay, so I think we are just about there. The pan is really, you can tell the oil has been absorbed, because my pan is starting to really brown out, and you can just little splash. These splashes are probably like, you know, 1.5 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons of water. All right. So, can they see my onions, Judy? Want to get them to see. I'm just like shocked how evenly it cooks on this induction. I'm new to the induction cooktop. Okay, so there. Now, just going to take this beautiful marinated chicken, which we can pretend has been marinated overnight. I'm going to scrape as much of it as I can because that just gives you more curry. Now I left it whole on the bone because I want the flavor of the bone. So in the beginning when that happens, just a little bit like chunkier to kind of brown. But really this process now, you're keeping the heat high. We're adding the marinated chicken. Our onions are cooked. We're going to mix it in. We're just browning. We're literally just browning the meat and very importantly, cooking the spices. This is a little bit of a cheat. So doing the marination adds a lot of flavor into the meat, but you still need to, you know, the packet went into the yogurt, although mixture raw. So you still need to cook the spices and on high heat. Open them up, which you can kind of still do here. And that's the cheat, is not having to go step. This just traditionally is made with about 13 spices. It's literally step by step, cook and open, cook and open, cook and open. Some are whole, some are ground, and it's actually a very tranquil kind of meditative process to do that. But I ended up making it like twice a year as a result, as opposed to just really enjoying it whenever I crave it, whenever my family craves it. JD has made this a bunch of times. It's like so easy. He's just used our packet. So I'm making sure my pan's not burning. I'm trying to get my chicken brown. So just kind of move it around, saute it. You don't want the chicken to stick. And while this is browning, I can tell you that, so it's a lot of meat, and you don't necessarily want 8 thighs, you know, maybe you have 10 people, or you don't want to serve it so big. Once it's fully cooked, it'll be pretty easy to just kind of like spoon out the bone, and even kind of like cut up the pieces in the pot, like without it being a big production of having to take it off and dice it. And you can kind of get more of a, what you would call a chicken tikka, which means small pieces, and you just have like the pieces of chicken, not in the bone. You know, it's a little bit easier to share, it's a little bit easier to eat, a little bit more elegant visually. But I really suggest cooking on the bone whenever you can. Even the lamb, I usually go to the butcher for the lamb and have them cut the lamb leg on the bone, so that I can cook it on the bone. And the same thing, you know, when you really cook it down and tenderize the meat, the bone literally falls off. You just can remove the bone if you don't want that actually in your dish. But I know that's harder to find. So this chicken is also a great, let me turn this down a little bit. Now my pan, which I don't know if you can tell, is browning a lot. So I am going to add more water. I'm going to turn the heat down a drop. It's still high heat. This is the thing with it, there's no exact rules, but you just have to kind of adjust. So I'm going to get more water. You just want to do what you need to do to keep your dish kind of going. And which is oftentimes just maybe adjusting the heat a little bit and adjusting, you know, adding the water. Very simple. Very forgiving. In general, braises are so forgiving. The only way to truly mess it up is maybe over salting, but we've added a Himalayan pink salt into this mixture just because I love the flavor. Makes the whole dish more of a predictable, even dish, which is why I put the salt in. It's a marinade. And it's really portioned out perfect for 3 pounds of meat, so you don't have to worry about that part. All right. So now it is on the bone, so I'm not moving it around as much, but some of these pieces are getting there. I'm just turning them over, getting all of that masala in there too, into those nooks and crannies. This onion masala mixture. It's so good. It smells so good. This is the part. It's just the green and black cardamom, the fennel, all of that, just like with the onion. It's just so good. Good. And so now, different things may happen depending on what kind of yogurt you're using. If you are using a Greek yogurt, which is obviously strained, the water is the movement, you're not going to get a lot of water. So there won't be that much liquid. But after about 8 to 10 minutes, you should get a little bit to a lot of liquid, depending on how much water is in your meat and how much water is in your yogurt. Doesn't matter. All that matters is while you're cooking, you don't burn if you don't have a lot of water, so you may have to add as you cook. And then when we simmer this, we're just going to adjust the water to what we need to get this fully cooked. And so you really want it like 3/4 submerged when we go to simmer. But be attentive, like if a lot of water is not coming out of your dish, which was kind of, I have these, I think I used air chilled chicken thighs, which don't have a lot of water, and like a medium thickness Greek yogurt. So I'm getting some water, but not that much. So I'm sort of cooking on the high heat, so I need to add more water to not burn, basically, at this stage. So again, you can see now water is starting to trickle out. You get those bubbly pockets of oil, masala, water. It's a good sign that, you know, the cooking is starting to happen. I think our spices are, I can smell them, you know, there's like this even balanced nose to it. It's also telling me that, okay, I think these spices have opened up, basically. These are very strong spices, so if you don't do this part, like really cook it on heat, let them open up, the flavor, it'll be a little off, or maybe it won't quite be there. If you've been making this dish a while and maybe you're seeing some variation in flavor, that's a big part of it. This stage of really opening up your spices is, you know, marination obviously, but this stage, cooking down cooking the base masala, you know, before you go to simmer, is really, really critical. All right. That. One more flip. Get this is correct here. All right. And that's kind of it. This thing looks it's starting to really bubble. So I'm gonna add just enough water, like I said, to be like not fully submerged, but 3/4 submerged, so it has a good. And with lamb, you might need a little more. You know, especially depending on how, you know, the thickness or the toughness of it rather. And so I am gonna just turn it down a drop while I get my water, because it did not do that. Give me 1 second. Sorry. I'll watch that simmer. This is about 1.5 cups. I think that'll probably do it, because I do have a good amount of liquid in here actually. Yeah, that's gonna do it. Now, so you do this and don't just cover it right away. That's pretty good. Maybe less than 1.5 cups for me. Now, don't worry if you put too much water. You'll have to cook it down a little bit more in the end, reduce it, and you'll still have the flavor. What you don't want is in that process that you made it, you know, you put so much water that now your chicken is stringy. So you have to cook it down so much that it's just the wrong texture. But the flavor, even if that happens, honestly, the flavor will be delicious. So don't even worry about that. So I'm gonna bring this to a boil, which should not take long. Turn the heat back up. It's happening pretty quickly, just because the base was so hot. And then once it boils, I'm gonna flip these over. So you really get everything in the liquid. Don't have any like too much onions sitting out. Like remember, the flavor, the liquid is gonna simmer with everything, and really there's so much flavor in here. You don't want it sitting on top necessarily or on the side. So just scrape up a little bit, get it all in there. Okay, and it should be boiling any minute. Once it boils, we're going to turn the heat down to a medium-low, cover it, and put a good amount of water in here, but you really got to check on it, especially in the beginning, every, 5 minutes or so, just a little quick, a little turn, make sure your chicken isn't sticking, and also make sure that the water is not, absorbing too quickly. You don't want it, burning, basically. So I check frequently. It's not going to ruin the flavor of the dish or anything. You can check really as much as you need to, but... almost there. Onions are all in. All that flavor is all in. You can see the color is turning. Another little trick I will check. This is not a bad stage. If you want really more of a red color, which is really what Rogan Josh is known for, where the name comes from, like a teaspoon of a good quality paprika will really, the flavor profile of that blends right in, and it will really brighten up, kind of turn your dish from more brownish to more reddish, which, if you don't care, you don't care. A lot of times in India they'll use food coloring for that, which I'm just absolutely completely against from a health standpoint, or who knows what else is in it. It's not just food coloring. But if you do care about the color, paprika is a great way to get that color. All right, so it's boiling. I'm gonna turn my heat down. Cover it. And we will be back in about 40 minutes or so for chicken, a little longer if it were lamb, and show you the finished dish. Thanks for joining. Hope you try it.